Hello, everyone, and welcome to OHSC Analysis. I'm Vasu, and I'm your host for today's episode. Today, we'll be talking about financial difficulties that Canadians are facing. To discuss this, we are happy to have with us the Shadow Minister for Finance and Middle Class Prosperity, Jasraj Singh Hallan. Jasraj, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Vasu. Thanks so much to you and the OHSCA for having me. It's always a pleasure. So my second time on here.
Yeah, I remember Vincenzo, our former president, had the honor to interview you a while back in season one, and we're glad to have you back on the show. We've obviously you have a way bigger position now, and one that you are much qualified for. So it'll be a pleasure discussing this issue with you that matters to many Canadians today.
I'm really looking forward to it, and it's my honor to be on here with all of you.
Well, thank you for your time, and I kind of just want to start off the interview, and I want to ask you, how did you get started into politics?
A little bit of a backstory. So I moved here to Canada from Dubai with my family when I was 5 years old. In the riding, I get to fortunately represent today in Calgary Forest Lawn. We grew up here under financial, I guess, hardships. We stood in line for low income bus passes in this great riding of Calgary Forest Lawn. Was very fortunate enough that we got to, and I was considered an at-risk youth. And growing up, we just saw a lot of hardships, but through the grace of God and the greatness of this country, after high school, I was able to complete my accounting diploma, and from there, we ran a successful home building company. But along the way, I had a few mentors in my life, and one of them was Manmeet Singh Pullar, and he was a cabinet minister here in Alberta under the PC government, and he had approached me and said, "Look, I don't care what you're doing. I need you to come onto this side now. You have to get involved politically." And I had done some phone calls and door knocking and things like that previously, but there was never any tie into wanting to actually run. And unfortunately, he passed away 1 month after he had that conversation with me, and this was in 2015. And so he kind of planted the seed inside of me. After he passed away, of course, there's a huge void that is missing and continues to be missed, which is left by him. But his legacy continues on. And I ran provincially first for the UCP here in Alberta. I won my first nomination. I lost in the election in April 2019. And then in August of 2019, this seat of Calgary Forest Lawn opened up federally. I was encouraged by a lot of people, especially from the UCP, to run. I ran, and again, through God's grace and the opportunities that I've had, I'm fortunate enough to be the member of parliament and the shadow minister for finance from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Yeah, it's definitely inspirational to hear your story, especially from where you came from and where you are now. It's definitely shows the principles and values of hard work and just getting through life. So I want to ask a little bit of a follow-up to that. How did your experiences from, for example, getting an accounting degree and running a business help you transition more to representing constituents and talking about problems that Canadians are facing?
Great question. And before I get into the question, I must say that when our new leader, the Honorable Pierre Poilievre, also the future Prime Minister of Canada, when he spoke to me about this role, he made one thing very clear. He said, "Jazz, you and me both come from humble beginnings. I, with being an immigrant here, and with Pierre, born and bred Calgarian, who was a child of an unwed 16-year-old who was adopted to two teachers, who grew up not having anything handed to him, who worked his way up through the hard work and through his own labor, and through the grace of God, got to be, and now today he's the leader of His Majesty's official opposition." So he said one thing to me, that we were both given opportunities to succeed in this country. This country gave us a lot to succeed, and the opportunities that it gave us, we're very grateful for that. We don't see those same opportunities today. We have to use our experience to make sure that we bring back that same opportunity for others, whether you're a newcomer or you live here. So he was very, very clear that we need to use our experience for that. So for someone like myself who, did accounting and ran a small business for 11 years. I also did a lot of charity work on the side. Like we mentored at-risk youth as well. We ran an after-school program. But what I learned was a lot of you learn more from your downfalls as a small business owner than you do as your successes, because you learn how to get up after you fall down. The difference between back then and what we're seeing today is people are putting in more effort. People are, um, doing more than one job. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're getting their degrees. They're putting in the work, but their paychecks aren't. They're getting stretched out. They're not getting back what they're putting in, and that's the big difference. As a home builder, for example, in 2008, when Prime Minister Stephen Harper was, our prime minister, and there was a recession at that time, we didn't see that recession go on too long. We saw a quick recovery, especially in the home building industry. Today, under Justin Trudeau, we still don't see a recovery since 2015. In the industry, I still talk to a lot of the tradespeople, and I talk to a lot of people in real estate. And ever since 2015, things have not really recovered or gotten to where they're supposed to be. So, for example, even back in 2015, I met a lot of our tradespeople were saying they've had to lay off their crews of 10 people, 15 people, and they had to go back on the job site themselves. And it was because they they couldn't afford the labor, they couldn't afford the long hours. Look, tradespeople are some of the hardest working people. There is no 9 to 5 for them. They gladly go to work from at 6 in the morning, sometimes all the way until midnight. I've seen them work. I've seen them work on weekends, but it's because they enjoy it. They see the fruits of their own labor. Today, there isn't that same opportunity or reward as there used to be. So for me, that's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing that everyday tradesperson's voices, our truckers' voices, those people that are our workers from ground up, that the immigrant voices. Those are the voices that I grew up around. So I'm bringing those experiences to the table. Also, to be able to be someone that was fortunate enough to be a mentor for at-risk youth, I'm bringing that perspective as well. And when we combine all these things, economy plays a huge factor into everyday life. And today, when the cost of living is everything is unaffordable because of inflation and the government's borrowing, Justin Trudeau's constant borrowing and not bringing down the debt, people are in a worse position than they've ever been. And the result is now we're seeing more and more families getting pushed into food banks, into homeless shelters. We're seeing 1 in 5 Canadians skipping meals. So for me, for someone who came here as an immigrant, we left everything behind to come to a place that we thought was a beacon of hope. Somewhere where, this country should not have people like skipping meals or having food bank use go up. So to me, that's very concerning. That's what I'm bringing to the table as far as experience goes.
Yeah, and I think experience is the most valuable tool that you have, because the things that you learned while you were getting that experience, other people don't have. And that's what sets you apart. And that's what helps you relate to many Canadians, right? And to speak on food banks, I mean, right now we're seeing record food bank usage. The affordability crisis is getting unreal under the Trudeau government, and we definitely need the Conservatives to fix it. So, thank you, Jasraj, for your time today, and thank you for joining us. So I want to hop into our Q&A segment. So let's take a look and analyze the issue of financial difficulties that Canadians are facing. Jasraj, are you ready?
Yes, let's go.
All right. So this first question comes from me, and I want to ask you, what are the roles and responsibilities for the Shadow Minister for Finance in the middle and for middle class prosperity?
Our number one goal is to hold this out of control spend, incompetent Liberal government, this costly coalition of the Liberals and the NDP to account. Our job is to make sure that we are um, pushing them to bring this unaffordability crisis that we have in this country down, the debt down, to control inflation and stop them from passing these nonsensical bills and making life more unaffordable for Canadians, stopping the tripling of the carbon tax, making gas, groceries, and home heating more and more expensive. Our job is that we're going to continue to make sure that more people can survive to be in the middle class, because a lot more people under this liberal NDP costly coalition are getting pushed out of the middle class.
Yeah, it's definitely like with inflation as high as it is right now. Although inflation kind of reached its peak in June, we haven't seen Canadians' bills gone down. The cost of food is still up year over year. The cost of gas is still up. And for example, if you were to take out a new mortgage, interest rates are through the roof. People can't afford new houses. So although the cost might be going down, it's still record highs, and it shows that many Canadians can't afford it.
Absolutely right. So, we have to look at the last 7 years. Why are we where we are today? And we're here because before COVID, Justin Trudeau spent $110 billion. He borrowed and spent $110 billion. This is the same guy that said I would not run a deficit more than $10 billion. So before COVID, he was already running $100 billion out of his own promise. During COVID, he spent a half a trillion dollars, of which $200 billion or 40% had nothing to do with COVID. And so he just kept spending money and kept spending money. And as our leader, Pierre Poilievre, says, there's too much money chasing too few goods. And that's why we have inflation or just inflation. It's because he kept borrowing. He canceled good energy projects. We don't have any new pipelines built in this country. That is another reason why home heating bills are gone double. And in some places in the country, up 300%. So because of that, and then on top of that, he punishes people, seniors, and others even further by tripling the carbon tax. And on January the 1st, he's also going to increase the payroll tax. So not only are they causing pain from these last 7 years, they keep wanting to cause even more pain by adding to it and adding more taxes on Canadians. So that's why we are where we are today. This is an out of control spending that's done by the Liberals, supported by their costly coalition partner, the NDP, who keeps propping them up, and it's just making life harder and harder for Canadians.
Yeah. The last thing the Liberals will do is take responsibility for their actions. Although they know that they spent all that money, they're not taking responsibility. Yet their finance minister is saying, cut your Disney Plus subscription and that'll help you afford food. Many Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And a study came out the other day saying that many Canadians cannot face a $500 increase in their bills, which is what many people have been facing in the past few months as inflation is soaring, gas prices are soaring, food prices are soaring. So generally, affordability crisis is getting worse and worse. And to speak on home heating, especially, what's going on in Europe right now is crazy. I mean, you see small businesses, homes, their home heating prices are going up thousands of percent. The last thing we would want is that to happen in Canada. And slowly, it might happen, knowing the Trudeau government cutting off our gas pipelines, gas expansion. So it's all we can do is hope.
Hope for a Poilievre government to come in soon, of course. But to your point, Canada could have replaced dirty dictator oil. Europe came here. Germany, the chancellor came to Canada and was literally begging for our natural gas. And Justin Trudeau said that he can't find. They need to create a business case. Well, the business case is clear. If we had built pipelines in this country, Justin Trudeau had 15 good LNG projects sitting on his table when he formed government. None of those got built. And look where we are today. We are at energy insecurity in this country and around the world. Canada could have been the world leader to replace all Putin's oil, and we don't. We have everything we need here in this country. And it just goes to your point about the finance minister also talking about Disney Plus. This is a government that's completely out of touch with Canadians. 1 in 5 Canadians are cutting meals, and she's talking about cutting Disney Plus. So it just goes to show you they have no idea what the harm that they've caused on Canadians. And if we had pipelines built in this country, we would not have bills as high as we have today, and we could have replaced other energy around the world that would have helped boost jobs, help boost our energy, and actually reduce the costs here in Canada. But what did they do? They introduced a carbon tax that they kept increasing, that has not reduced emissions, that they've never met a single emission reduction target either. So this NTP coalition of the with the Liberals is completely out of touch with what the reality is on the ground.
Yeah. So I want to move on to our second question, and this comes from Hayden in York Simcoe. So affordability has resonated with many young people over the last 2 years, and we've seen young supporters increase of the Conservative Party of Canada under Pierre's leadership vastly in the last few months. So why do you think that this is a case, and what does this mean for the Conservative Party as a movement?
Well, thank you, Hayden. That's a great question. Um, you know, we saw over the last several months our new leader, Pierre Poilievre, the next Prime Minister of Canada. We saw him when he was in his leadership race. How many different Canadians he reached out to? How many people were connecting with him? We saw these rallies with the numbers like we've never seen before. Like you mentioned, there's youth that either has never voted, that has never ever made a membership for any party before, coming on board with the Conservatives. We see people from all walks of life getting on board because our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been resonating because he's talking about real issues and he has real solutions for them. So when we look at things like homes in this, we have a housing crisis right now. It's because we don't have enough homes. We have too much demand and not enough supply, and it's driven up the cost of everything. This Liberal government has done nothing to help address that. Our leader has been very clear. We will use our federally regulated buildings that are empty right now. About 15% of them we can use to make affordable housing or make more units in this country. We can do that right away. We need to tie in dollars with the municipalities so that they need to speed up their projects, speed up their building permits, so we can have more homes built in this country. What will that do? That'll help that youth, the youth that can't even imagine owning a home today in this environment. What we're going to also be doing is making sure that we bring down the deficit so that your dollar stays as close to a dollar as possible, because people's paychecks are stretched out, and on top of that, your dollar is not the same value as it should be. So I've seen so much excitement. Our leader met close to 96,000 people, I believe the number was, all across Canada in his rallies. And that's why he was resonating, because he's talking about real issues, not gaslighting, not no virtue signaling. He's seen the problems and he has actual solutions to them. And so we're in a really good time right now. We've been touring the country. We were just with our leader in Vancouver. Just the excitement, because he's bringing hope back. There's too much hurt in this country under the Liberal NDP coalition, but he's bringing hope back that this country can again be the beacon of hope that people used to come to live the Canadian dream.
Yeah. And I can say under Pierre's leadership, I've never seen this level of unity before. I mean, of course, like talking about the issues that matter, that's one thing, but proposing real solutions, that's another thing. And it's not like Pierre Poilievre, like Trudeau, although he may say stuff, he doesn't have real solutions. He just says he will do it. And we've seen this pattern over the last 7 years. Pierre has a solution and he's very straightforward about it, right? He talks to people. He explains it very straightforward. There is, as you said, there's no gaslighting. There's no like technical terms, nothing like that, right? It's simple solutions that can bring our country back on track.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what's resonating. It's the willingness to fix our country, because right now under Justin Trudeau, this country is broken. We look at any department, it's all broken. Immigration is broken. Passports are broken. Our airports are broken. Our Revenue Canada is broken. Every single department under this Liberal government is broken, and it's harming Canadians. People are not doing well right now.
Yeah. And to kind of touch on departments being broken, I'm sure you saw the other day, Arrive Can, they spent $54 million on the app. And we saw not almost 48 hours after, Toronto tech firm, they practically created the same copy of the app. And they said, in order to maintain this for as long as the Canadian government did and to develop it, it would cost them under $1 million. Yet the Canadian government managed to spend 54 times that. So I mean, this is just a spending habit which has developed with the government over the last 7 years, and it's definitely not getting any better. And it's taking away taxpayers' dollars, which is not what you want, and it's creating deficits, meaning higher taxes. And generally, it's not good for any Canadian.
Absolutely. Look, it just goes back to show how out of touch this government is. They gave $54 million contract to an app that we didn't need and that didn't work. And on top of that, that app could have been created for $250,000. And what are we finding out now? They gave money to companies that didn't even know they got the money, that said we had nothing to do with this app. So it just goes to show, and to your point about wasteful spending, how do you expect anything different from a prime minister who just went to London to sing in a luxurious hotel? He spent in 4 nights $6,000 a night. For 4 nights, that's $24,000. That's how much the average family spends on rent in a year annually, and he spent that in 4 nights. The wasteful spending by this government, especially over COVID, was unprecedented. They give $237 million to their former Liberal. They give him a contract, former Liberal MP, for ventilators. Not a single ventilator was used, yet they gave a contract for $237 million. They gave field hospital contracts that didn't even get built for $100 million. It just goes back to show that this government is completely out of touch, and they they have no clue, and the wasteful spending is what contributed to inflation.
Yeah. And as Trudeau said it best himself, he doesn't think about monetary policy.
Yeah, and I wish you would.
Yeah, so I want to move on to our third question. So this comes from Hayden as well. He wants to ask you, what do you think is the largest current issue in your constituency, and what is your team doing to address this?
Great question again. Thank you, Hayden. It's the cost of living, unaffordability, and the inflation crisis that Justin Trudeau created. I think you can go to any constituency in Canada, and this is the number one issue. And what we're doing is continuing to put straightforward, common sense solutions. We put a motion forward in the House of Commons that said no new taxes. The NDP Liberal Costly Coalition voted that down. We said no more increases in the tripling of the carbon tax. They said no. They both teamed up. The Costly Coalition voted that down. We said that we want to make sure that we're supporting Canadians. No more carbon tax on home heating, especially when we see the cost of home heating going up, doubling, and especially in Atlantic Canada, it is really, really hard there for people. In some cases, they're spending $7,000 extra to heat their homes because they're heating their homes with heating oil, which is diesel. We put that motion forward, and even though the the premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, who's a Liberal premier, has asked for no carbon tax on home heating, he asked for it. We put the motion forward. The Costly Coalition voted that down as well. We are continuing to push for answers. We just recently, before this last week, we put forward another motion for making sure we investigate what happened with the $54 million of the Arrive scam app that we call. And so that passed in the House of Commons. We're happy to see that. We're going to continue to push and make sure that we're trying to make, you know, life more affordable for Canadians.
Yeah. And I think that issue is relevant in many constituencies, as you said. I was just talking with Michelle Ferrer the other day, and we were talking about the affordability crisis and the cost of living. And of course, there's a financial aspect to it, but there's also a mental health aspect to it as well, because your stress gets affected, and especially if you have a family to provide for, right? It's not just yourself; it's your partner, your children, right? So it's definitely it's affecting Canadians in all types of ways, and we need a conservative government to help us get out of it.
Absolutely true, and I'm my colleague Michelle Ferreri, a new rookie MP, is just amazing. She's an absolute rock star, one of the most compassionate people I've ever met.
Yeah. So I want to move on to our last and final question. So, what are the conservatives doing in order to fight against the carbon tax as the cost of energy soars and many Canadians will not be able to heat their homes this winter?
So again, let's talk about the carbon tax really quickly. This is a tax on people that has done nothing to reduce emissions, that has not met the Liberals' targets for reductions of emissions. It has done nothing but cause more pain and suffering to Canadians. The carbon tax, which they keep increasing, which they broke their promise, which they made in 2015, that they wouldn't increase it past, I believe it was $50 a ton, and it's going to go up to, they're going to triple that by 2030. The government continues to say that more Canadians will receive more in their pocket than what they'll pay. But the public, the budgeting officer, which we call the PBO, he has proven that wrong. In my province of Alberta, right now, more people are paying out of their pocket for a carbon tax that's not working than what they're getting back. And when they triple the tax, Albertans are going to pay close to $2,300. And the Liberals are hiding another second carbon tax that they're going to call the clean fuel standard. That's going to make home heating even more expensive. So I did mention before, we've put motions forward in the House of Commons again that said no more, don't put any carbon tax on home heating, especially today when we've seen in Atlantic Canada how hard things are. We've put forward these motions of no new taxes, no tripling of the carbon tax. It's unfortunate the ideological NDP Liberal Costly Coalition keeps voting things down. They're not serious about making life more affordable for Canadians. They have band-aid solutions that have been adding to inflation rather than helping address the inflation crisis that they created.
Yeah, I think everything which you just said is completely true. I mean, the Trudeau government and the NDP, otherwise known as the Costly Coalition, are not doing anything to help Canadians. They're all talk and they don't do anything. If anything, they've made affordability worse with their spending habits and their general disregard for Canadians. So I think that about wraps it up. So thank you, Jasraj, for your time today. We really appreciate you being here with us, and we wish you well in the future.
Hey, it's an honor, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you to yourself, Vasu, the OHSCA team, including Hayden, including Vincenzo. Keep up all your guys' great work.
Thank you.